Alrighty, so I'm going to go in a little and work up this, continue working this up, and really, it's coming along fine. This exercise, we're just going to try to get the best we can with the time allotted. Mostly get the procedure more understood. So I'm over here. I'm going to jump around this area for a while, bringing up the darks. Remember, I don't want the darks inside the glass to be as dark as the darks outside. Right now, this is darker than that. So I need to watch that. But I'll probably end up either rubbing over it with a Q-tip or something down the road, and this dark will lose a lot of its intensity. So I'm coming in a little darker than I might want to ultimately be, in hopes that it'll ultimately just lay down and be fine, and it will. Okay, just going in, working up my intermediate. Just being able to pull a freehand arc or ellipse, and I'm using a maul stick, but it's still so hard. You just have to have a really good hand. I found it's kind of nice if you almost do like archery. Take a deep breath, release, so take a breath and then come in and pull the line as you're breathing out in a nice relaxed manner. And you can pull some really nice sweeping lines that are really clean if you just keep your wits about you. It's tough. There we go. So getting that glass to pop a little bit more. A little terp. As we go in and maybe want to kind of move a little faster across the little section to make it darken it a little bit. With the other strokes I was just pulling, I wasn't using hardly any turpentine in it. It was more like dry brushing almost. Again, we can just take a little Q-tip every once in a while and say, okay, I want to work a little transition, maybe a little bit of reflection. Yeah, just trying to get a nice illusion. So I'm looking for little areas right now that I might want to pick out a little bit of something. So again, when you do that, you lay some terp down, and then because of the surface, the way it reacts, you could take your finger and run over it. You could run over it with another brush. There's any number of ways to pull out more of the subtlety. And it's kind of nice. It's a having that surface that it takes out in that manner is a plus and a minus. Everything's a plus and minus. There'll be certain advantages to that, and there'll be certain disadvantages to that. So ultimately, you can't really have your cake and eat it too all the time. I mean, you can't have a perfect scenario. So be prepared occasionally for some things to fight you a little bit. But then on the flip side, they'll probably be, some things will be easier than they would be on other surfaces or with other techniques. Smoothing it out a little bit. So this, I might want to rest my maul stick here. And very carefully reaffirm some of these darks that are up at the top there. Starting to build our way up to our upper level. Yeah. A little turp, a little more paint, spin the brush, make sure it's well loaded. Come back down, reaffirm, cleaning up some of the darks again. Just trying to get that iridescent illusion of that, or that way that layering occurs on the glass. It's challenging. Fun though. Stuff's really fun to try to do. Again, try to just embrace each challenge. I'm gonna go back in and get these, so I just ran my finger over it to get a certain effect. Now I need to go back and maybe clean up a few areas that used to be dark. Now they've gotten kind of messed up a little bit while I was pulling that stuff out, so I want to go back. And it's a constant fight like that as you bring it up to what you would consider a finish. Man, you can fight on a pick out for a long time. A lot of times people say, oh, that must be a really fast technique. It is and it isn't. I mean, depending on the layering complexity and the illusion you want to get, it's layer after layer. It's almost like glazing. So it has a similar component to it. So remember, darker, it won't be ultimately that dark, but darker outside of the glass, and then as that shadow passes through the glass, we're seeing a veil of glass between the object, the shadow, and so it obviously is going to lose a little bit of darkness. It's going to be a little lighter as it goes. Not that different. So we'd want to go in here now and either, kind of clean your brush off a little bit so there's not as much paint on it, and then go in to where the shadow is passing through the glass and do a slightly lighter version than that. And that'll then carry on down into this area probably. And then there may be some diffusion or distortion that occurs because the glass has a roundness to it, and therefore it's bending the reflection of whatever object's going through it. So it won't just go straight through. It might go through and start doing some really wild curves and twists and turns, and be aware and look for that. Over here. Jumping around a little bit. I don't mean to confuse you guys, just trying to bring up this painting. I'll see something out of the corner of my eye and go, oh, I got to get over there. So the ground right now through this area, I'm going to work a little bit and through here. Just try to darken it up a little bit down there so that it doesn't pop too much. I want to drop. I got a little bit of paint on here, not much. I might borrow a little from there as I try to get this little negative area in here a little quieted down. And then we'll run over to the other side. Starting to run out of paint here, but we'll just kind of, I don't want it to be thick. You know, really pick out isn't a thick painting technique, right? It's going to be thin. So it's not going to have the sexy brushwork that I so often look for in my own work, that fetch-y kind of really thick, fun painting style. This is going to be more tight. Some people might even say a little more uptight, but it's a technique, and the technique really, you know, you can't load up all prima thick strokes on a pick out. It would look really goofy. It really wouldn't even make sense. I'm just putting a glaze of tone over this bottom corner area to knock everything down a little bit and keep it a little bit more cohesive. Go over on this side now. See, that initial glaze doesn't lift as much as it used to because it's starting to settle in. And now I can kind of put a glaze over all of it, bringing it even a little bit more harmonious as far as values are concerned. Here we go. A lot of this is just about learning. Again, we're just taking found objects, just objects around, and we're learning to push and pull basic composition, like we were talking about, and basically just how to use the brush in creative manner. Okay. We haven't done any kneaded eraser stuff yet. Let's see if we can do a little of that. Just a little. So all these little cha-chings, little tiny white spots and little areas that really make it look like glass, all the little reflections of objects off camera, lights, other lights, things. And you can edit some of those out if you want. You don't have to have them all, obviously. You can play around with them. Like, I'm not really that fond of how this shape here is looking down at the bottom, so I might just take a little bit and just knock it down a little bit. Yeah, I like that better. Get rid of that. Smooth this out a little bit, gradate that. Just, yeah, it's really, really fun. Put a little tone down there. Then down in that glass, I might want to take a little sable round, load it up with some turp, make sure I've got all the burnt umber cleaned out of it. Just pick out a few little again, sometimes the way the surface is, you got to kind of drop the turp off, then wipe it, and it'll pull out what it is you wanted to pull out. Just delicate little stuff. All right. We've lost this little crease line in the drapery back here. I just noticed as I was going up to work around there. I could see a ghost image of the sketch that I had in before. And let's just go in and kind of put that in while we're there. It looks kind of a dumpy looking shape, not terribly fond of it, so I might just use my finger to knock it down a little bit like that. I was heading for this thing here, which is just a nightmare of, you probably want to just indicate it rather than trying to write. I mean, you're not going to be able to write the writing on it, so you could create an illusion of writing that was just gibberish to make it look like something was written on it, and that would be kind of what we would call, again, indication. It's up to you, again, how much fanaticism with, you know, those kind of things you want to do. I mean, to me, it's kind of not the greatest shape up there. So I'll play around with it a little bit, but I'm not going to hyper obsess about it. I need to create some intermediate layers in here too. I might just go over the whole thing and make it a slightly darker emblem or something so that I don't have to contend with some of the difficulties of pick out on that, because that could be a 20-30 minute deal right there. And you know, in a perfect scenario, and again, like I said, you may have the time and interest to do that, feel free. Most of what I'm doing here, again, is teaching procedure for these kind of exercises. Later, when we do really finished stuff, you know, I'll open it up and I'll spend, you know, 10-15 hours on some of these projects coming down the road. That's where you're really going to get to see the way I really paint. But this is more procedural technique for learning. And so it's not going to be as exciting. It's going to be a little bit, you know, but in some ways it might. It depends on who you are and how much. I've had so much exposure to this stuff, so you may not have, and it may be so neat because it's just so new, and I hope that's the case. So we're going to outline that a little bit just to try to and we'll feather out. Once we have that dark line there, we'll take that dark and we'll just move away from it so that it leaves a very crisp edge. There we go, like that. That'll dry down a little bit. I know it looks probably kind of odd on your camera because it's, whenever I go over something, you're putting a shiny effect on top of a dull one because of the way the paint absorbs into the surface. And that can look kind of weird on camera. But I'll provide a PDF at the end for you of the finished painting, so you can have that either printed out or on your iPad or something, computer screen, while you're doing your painting, so that you can have an example of that as well. So that'll be along with you watching the video and watching it happen. You'll have a clear image of it in front of you that you can refer back to. Just going in and fighting for these little hot spots and highlights and little kicker darks and stuff that help to pop everything a little bit more. And just so much you could do on this. So many little nuances, little accents. When you do a little outline like that, maybe knock it down a little bit so it doesn't look too and it's constant build up, tear down, build up, tear down, build up, tear down. It's slightly maddening, but it's so how painting works, you know. So you kind of just get used to it after years of doing it. You kind of get used to this idea that, you know, you just have to be willing to fight that layering process, fight for that layering process, more like what I should be saying, but. Because it is what it is, you know. We can try to fight it, we can try to ignore it, but it's always going to be there. Ultimately, we just have to get good at it. As I'm coming down to the end here, just doing some little outlining. Yeah, like I said, you could take this a lot further, and you may want to. I mean, you may want to just take the gist of what I'm doing and use it as a springboard with which to take these exercises even a little bit further if you're so inclined. If I had the time, I would. You know, I would probably go a little more in depth into them. But again, my driving desire here for you on this exercise is to show you how to kind of approach it. The rest is semantics, you know. Okay, so a lot of things I would like to still fight for on this, and I might do a little work afterwards on it, not much, but just before I take a picture of it for you guys to look at, so you'll have a little bit more to get your teeth into. But the main thing is just it gets the point across. Hopefully you're having fun doing it when you do this exercise, and try to just embrace this idea of building up your layers, learning to use the techniques, the brush a certain way, how the surface handles. All this is going to be great for the future, more advanced exercises we're going to be doing here coming up. So anyway, enjoy, have fun with this one. Here's my timer. So that was about 60 minutes. You may want to spend more like an hour, 2 hours, 2 hours on it. I spent an hour. You're going to want to spend probably twice that much and take it a little bit further. I look forward to seeing your efforts, and let's move on to the burnt umber and white.